Good morning, everybody. My name is Roland Ginger. My indigenous name is Hayuksikuananish. The Ginger comes from my father's family name. He's a recognized whaling chief, Randall Peter Ginger Sr. from Ho-Chaklasut First Nation out on the West Coast. My mother is Florence Wiley. She's Hawaiian First Nation, which some know as Banfield or the end of the West Coast Trail. Myself, I'm registered with Hawaiian First Nation and honored to be a guest in the Lekwungen and Kusamson territories today. I want to welcome you here to the territory and the work that we're going to be doing. And I have Shirley Alphonse Thalamiat, and she's Kautzen spiritual advisor for Railroads. And I'll let her take over to do opening prayer for today's session. Can I get everybody to stand, please? Thank you.
Tito siam zalt men. Hais got na coil. Hais got a mugs coil. Magwet siam na siea. Siam na stimo. Siam solchweinst. Hais got na la gomens who met with Tomo Magansa. The solchweins at the wine solchweins at the snowayas. Squimetal, tsewatal. Lalametal to na coil. Do mugs coil. Gonglins dar squallowin, nutzelmat squallowin. Creator, Great Spirit, as we gather here today at Royal Roads University, we acknowledge and honor our people of the Black Nation on this day of Black History Month. We are grateful and thankful to them for all they are to the good people of the world. Your culture, your arts, many, many talents you share with us. The leaders that have helped to shape a better world for us all, and especially for our children, our grandchildren. We are thankful for songs and dance and words that touch us deeply, resonating with our spirit, uplifting and healing. With much gratitude and many, many haichas to our brothers and sisters, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Rosa Parks, Maya Angelou, and Miriam Makeba. We thank you, the Black Nation, for your walk on this earth. Hai Sratitosia.
And I'm just going to pass the mic over to Dominique and lead us on the next.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our annual Black History Month event. My name is Dominique Jacobs. I am a Royal Roads alum and a member of the Diversity Action Group. We are making history in 2019. We are seeing advances like the technology pioneered by Dr. Hadia Nicole Green that kills cancer cells with laser treatments. NASA recently renamed a West Virginia facility in honor of Hidden Figures mathematician Katherine Johnson 57 years after her calculations helped the first manned spaceflight orbit the Earth. The recent Academy Awards saw Ruth Carter become the first Black person to win an Oscar for costume design, and Hannah Beachler, the first Black person to win an Oscar for production design. Mahershala Ali became the second Black actor to win 2 Oscars after Denzel Washington, and most notable was Spike Lee's first Oscar win after a lifetime of making critically acclaimed films. Even everyday people like Chicago woman Candace Payne, who used her personal credit card to buy out hotel rooms for the homeless during the record-breaking deep freeze this winter, when there was no help forthcoming from the city. But we constantly see racist tropes and attitudes reflected in the mainstream, like major fashion houses Gucci, Prada, Burberry, who were forced to issue public apologies for their blackface and noose around the neck fashions. And the new law that introduced this month, which bans discrimination against natural black hairstyles because of the high rate of discrimination, people wearing afros, braids, dreadlocks. While we are definitely seeing a cultural shift towards more progressive diversity, are these causes for celebration, or is this just too little too late? These are some things we can consider as we interact with our panel speakers today. Let's take a moment to welcome them. We have our panel moderator, Alelu Adele, who is an associate faculty member at Royal Roads University. His professional background includes the Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development, Permanent Mission of Canada to the Organization of American States in Washington, D.C., Rights to Play, Canadian National Office in Toronto, the United Nations Internal Strategy for Disaster Reduction in Switzerland, and UNICEF in Peru. He has a passion for human and children's rights and intercultural communication. Welcome, Ulalu. Thank you. We have Ruth Mojid. She is the Equity and Communications Consultant for the Inclusion Group. She's a community organizer, communications strategist, and connector. She hosts and produces Community Connect, a talk show on Shaw TV, where she engages stakeholders on various topics around equity, diversity, and inclusion for newcomers and other marginalized members of the community. Welcome, Ruth. We have Timothy Katuri. He's the program manager of the Master of Global Management program at Royal Roads University. He's also a certified executive coach. He's a Royal Roads alum whose specialties include international and intercultural communication, individual and team coaching. He is curious about the relationships between media and democracy and passionate about accessible, practical, relevant, and solutions-oriented education. Welcome, Timothy. And last but not least, we have Ms. Sylvia Mange-Elene, who's the president of the BC Black History Awareness Society. She's also an entrepreneur and the founder-director of two businesses, Koleha Love, which provides non-medical care services to seniors, and Koleha Culture, which is a consultancy specializing in improving equity and inclusion and diversity practices for businesses. Sylvia holds a BBA majoring in human resources from Camosun College and a postgraduate diploma in intercultural education from the University of Victoria. Her passions are women's issues, fitness, and wellness. Welcome, Sylvia. Thanks to all the panelists today for leading us in a discussion on diversity, inclusion, success, and challenges being of African heritage in British Columbia. I'll hand it over to our moderator.
Thank you, Dominique. So we've already heard some of the names which are renowned with Black history on a global level, on a macro level, but today we want to have more of a micro level conversation and make it local to British Columbia. So I'm going to begin by asking each of our panelists how they arrived in Victoria.
Good afternoon. I came in an airplane. But Victoria has been home for almost 13 years, and I think it now marks the longest place I have lived in my entire life, and that is a little difficult to wrap my head around. But I came to Royal Roads specifically to do my master's in intercultural communication, loved it, and have stayed. Was that the...
Have you lived anywhere else in Canada?
Oh, right, Halifax for 7 years. Too cold, had to leave pretty quickly, but yes, Kenya, Halifax, Victoria.
Perfect.
My name is Sylvia, and before I begin, I want to acknowledge the land that we are in, and I want to acknowledge that we live in a land that we are beneficiaries of a genocide, and I want to thank you so much. So yeah, I was brought here the same way I was brought to Spain, and then to 6 different countries in Europe that I lived, and then I met my partner in England, London, England, and we moved here. So I was brought here. And I was brought here, and I didn't know anything about Canada. Now I know a lot, good and bad. And yes, so I have been here for how long now? 15 years.
Thank you. My name is Ruth Majid. Moved here about 3.5 years ago from Lagos, Nigeria. At the time that I came to Canada, I had absolutely no idea that I was going to stay. I just came to school, wanted to just do my thing and take some of that experience back home, but fell in love with the city, fell in love with this campus, and it's been a huge part of my story and my journey being in Canada, and that's it. I haven't lived in any other part of the country.
Thank you, Ruth. We'll keep on on that side. So my next question to the panelists is, what does it mean to celebrate Black History Month living in Canada and also as an immigrant to Canada as well?
When I was invited to be on this panel, which is a great honor, so thank you for including my voice, I started thinking about that, and I don't know whether I have identified as Black in terms of growing up in Kenya. That's not my primary identity. But until moving to Canada, that is when I now then recognized and acknowledged what it meant to, and I don't know whether this is actually making sense. So Black History Month for me is, maybe I take it for granted because I have not truly sat and appreciated what fellow Black people in and around the world have endured and experienced, that this is necessary. Because we have, again, as Africans living in Africa, always been. I guess that's, I think I can think this through a little bit more as we continue. And I would also, I apologize for not acknowledging the land we are on. I think that is something that has also become very important to me, to acknowledge the space that we are on, the traditional lands that we occupy here today, because that is, again, another part of what has now become as an identity for me is Royal Road and the acknowledgement of the Coast Sampson and Coast Salish lands that we occupy. So thank you for reminding me of that and for the welcome here.
Okay, so just echoing what Tim was saying about acknowledging the lands that we're privileged to be sitting, living, standing, and walking on today. But in terms of what it means for me as a Black person to be celebrating Black History Month, I think that moving away from all of the politics and everything that is around these kinds of celebration, for me it's the history. It's everything that it's taken for us to be here. Not taken for granted, again, to acknowledging the territories that we walk upon. It's everything that has happened that has set the stage for us to be able to live on this land. It's everything that ancestors of mine who, in some ways I'm not connected to, or in more ways than I know, I am connected to. It's everything that they've done to lay the groundwork for me to be able to access certain things today, for me to be able to access the kind of education that I've been privileged to have, for me to be able to connect with community the way that I've been able to. So for me, it's the history and it's the power behind that.
Yes, for me too. In fact, the line of work that I have picked is is that, right? To be able to work and to be able to make the world a better place, when it comes to cultural communications, when it comes to different people, when it comes to different cultures. Black History Month for me is something new, because where I came from, which is Spain, I grew up there, we didn't have that celebration. And I understand what you said about in Africa not celebrating this, because in Africa we don't celebrate blacks. We are black, period. Yeah, it's nothing to celebrate, right? But when we came to these countries, we realized that, we are minorities here, and there is something, and as my people think that, unions are created to defend workers, right? So associations of culture, the people from different culture are created to defend themselves from the majority, right? Which is normally white people, right? So, so when I came here and I realized about all this, about the indigenous people, about the black people, about the Chinese, and I started to learn the history of each one of the group, because let me tell you, I know the history of each one of the group that lived in Canada, which really gave me it blew my mind. I'm thinking, oh my God, look at this country. Look at this great country that is a great country because we all have done great things in this country, but also there's so much to do still. There's so much work to do when it comes to celebrate other people's cultures and when it comes to accept other people. And that is my work. Yeah. Hopefully I answered your question.
That's good. That's actually a perfect segue into another question. Let's discuss multiculturalism. Canada is a country which has many immigrants, and you've kind of touched on a few of those different groups as well. In fact, we're all immigrants if we go back far enough. But if we think about what it means to be black through the eyes of also thinking in terms of multiculturalism and what multiculturalism means in Canada, how would you say that the policies and the practices in place for advocating for multiculturalism have been sensitive to black individuals within Canada? Or do you feel that there are some gaps that we can address?
I always say that if you want something to be done, you cannot expect other people to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. So if we are not happy as black people about the policies in Canada that affect black people, we have to do something about it.
What does it mean? Even
so far, I'm fine. I'm fine with with whatever. I'm fine, with. I mean, things come up, and then we have to assess those things. And if we said, okay, this is. I don't know. I guess I don't understand very well what you mean with policies, and because I don't think.
So multiculturalism was something which. The first Pierre Trudeau, implemented as part of...
there is an act, Multiculturalism Act.
Right, and so when we think of multiculturalism as a country, and then we also want to look at it within the lens of, we're talking about Black history today, so blacks in Canada, what areas do you feel have been addressed to help to advocate for that celebration of black culture, and what other areas could we potentially work on in order to create more awareness about certain things which are currently not under the radar or given attention by government, civil society, and everyday people?
Well, I think that is a very hard question to me to answer, because the same, I'm sure that somebody, maybe Ruth or...
Can I try to speak to that? So two things come to mind for me. And oftentimes I feel like some words, we just get so used to throwing them around that we lose the power in that. When I hear a word like multiculturalism, there is so much that is in there. But for me, the angle from which I want to look at that is going from the conversation around diversity to inclusion. So, to equity, not just inclusion. I feel like inclusion is the day-to-day thing that we do to carry people along, but equity is the effort that we make to meet people where they are. So, in answering that question, I think that the same thing that would apply to being black. I'm careful to exonerate us and say, when you get into things like policies, they're big enough that everyone should be able to see themselves in it. So it should be equitable opportunities for everyone. So whether it's as a black person, as an indigenous person, as someone from India, or whatever cultural groups, my point is, multiculturalism for me is something that everyone should be able to see themselves in. Let's go beyond the conversations around race and color and whatever other silos there could be in there.
Yes. The two sides, I think, which is a bit of a double-edged sword, is looking at black people as individuals, so having an African identity. For me, then is broken down into a Kenyan identity, and then there's a multitude of, again, several black identities that have to be experienced. So when you look at, from the multicultural perspective, or a black voice, I think is not heard enough, but the other side is, which black voice would we then want to hear?
Thank
would
you.
it be my
Right.
voice as a Kenyan? That is the other.
And so actually, Sylvia
Yes, what
initially
I was saying,
responded,
that
and she said,
we have to do it ourselves.
right. And so what does it even mean? So we're using the term black. And now you've spoken about the fact that, myself, from Nigeria. So when I think of multiculturalism, even in Nigeria, we have over 200 ethnic groups and many languages as well. So for me, Nigeria is very multicultural. And it's not solely based on the color of one's skin, but because culture in itself is something which is continually evolving. And so then when we come to Canada, and as immigrants, we are more intentional about thinking about multiculturalism through the lens of different nationalities, different ethnic groups again. But now as we talk about black within the context of Canada, what does that even mean, black? And which black voice is it that we're actually advocating for?
One of the interesting things for me, and I try not to talk about this much, but my experience with racism was in a black context, in Nova Scotia, meeting with the African Canadians. I did not have the same views, values, mindset, and it was very difficult to blend in. Although I felt more drawn to the black community, but it was very difficult to understand that I didn't fit in, even though I was just as black. And that was shocking. That was shocking and a little hurtful, until I then had to step back and figure out, okay, what do I expect? And I was expecting everybody to have my mindset, which was a Kenyan one, and not so true.
Yeah, there is, in Canada, there is, of course, different blacks. We have the blacks that come from United States, and we have the blacks that came from Africa, and we have the blacks that came from Europe, like me, and we have the blacks that were born here, right? So, and I think each one of them will have a different perspective.
And the Caribbean too.
And the Caribbean, sorry.
And Latin America, all through Latin America.
Yeah, so, and I think each black group will have different perspective because they have different experiences, and that is the norm. Like, I think I was at the sauna the other day, and somebody told me that, they have invited their African American friend for dinner, and I said to them, "Is your friend born in United States?" And he's like, "No, he's born here in Canada." And I said, "Why are you calling him African American?" And he's like, "Oh, I thought that was the term that you used." And I said, "No, African American is the person that was a black person born in United States. You can call Canadian, African Canadian, a person that was born in Canada. And the rest of us, we are very fine with calling us blacks. Because I don't think any other person, apart from the African Americans themselves, you cannot call them black, because they don't want that. They change the term themselves to African American. So they are called African American. And the Canadians, black Canadians, I don't know what they want to be called. I don't know if they want to be called African Canadians or just black. But I can assure you that if you didn't know, the rest of us, we are happy with be calling blacks, right? Right, so. I don't know if that helps a little bit.
No. And I think it's interesting because similar to what Tim said, when you're from a place where everybody's black, you don't think of yourself as black at all until somebody brings it to your attention. But thank you all. You had a chance to say something? Okay. So now let's talk about your experiences here in Victoria. In a sentence, let's talk on an individual level and then even just through the lived experiences of other blacks that you associate with. So 2 sentences. The first is for yourself. The second is for your sphere of influence. What is the experience, or what has the experience been for you being a black person in Victoria?
My experience has been exceptionally positive, welcoming. I came to do a master's in intercultural communication. So everybody in my cohort had that sensitivity to begin with. And I then have got to know a Kenyan community in Victoria, and I think everybody has a similar sense that Victoria is difficult for anybody that is not from the island to begin with. So I think then to fit into, there's nothing negative, it's just very difficult to fit in.
Yeah, and I would just pretty much echo that. Coming in and trying to make sense of this new world and feeling like there's a strong need to fit in. And if there's anything that I'm working on right now or putting a lot of energy into, it's things around we don't have to fit in to belong here. We need to, talking about multiculturalism again and equity for everyone, we need to find that place where everyone can meet at the same point. The reason we were allowed in here in the first place is because we have something to offer. Right. And if you're not creating those opportunities or creating or accepting, giving room for those opportunities for us to really contribute and to bring to the fore what we can offer, then everyone loses. And for the other people that I've come across, pretty much, I feel like our stories ultimately find their point of convergence. They're each uniquely different, but it's still the thing we're trying to find community, trying to find a sense of belonging, and
Yeah, and naturally it's hard to make sweeping generalizations, but for the sake of our conversation, Sylvia, I'll let you actually speak to this first before I ask anything.
About my experience in Victoria?
Sure.
Yeah. My experience in Victoria has been very positive. When I finished my degree, somebody said to me, you have to first have like at least 100 interviews and then, and then see, apply for 100 jobs, have your interviews. And I didn't apply for 100 jobs. I just applied for 25 and I had 4 interviews. And then I said, enough of this, because I went to an interview, they interviewed me 4 times. 4 times in the same company. And then they didn't pick me, and I was so mad. I'm like, after 4 times, where else, right? So I decided to start my own businesses, and But it has been positive, yeah.
And so, even talking about starting your own business, and you spoke about equity as well. I personally, my family moved to Canada in 96, 95, and to Victoria in 96. And then I went away, but it's been very interesting to see how much Victoria has changed over that 20-year period. And even just seeing more immigrants come in, my father, his initial experience when coming here and looking for work, he has a PhD in chemical engineering from a school in the UK. And a lot of the interviews that he initially had were met with very negative sentiments. And not because he wasn't qualified, not because he doesn't have the competencies, but comments which would suggest that because of where you come from, you can't fulfill what it is that we're looking for. So it's great to even hear 6 years in Victoria, 3 years in Victoria, and so on and so forth, how much that has changed. Even going to high school, my experiences here being completely different as well. So it's good to see that there has been progress in that regard. And once again, intersectionality, everyone's experience is going to be unique and different. But the fact that we're even able to have a conversation like this and we have diversity in the room with people who want to hear these different perspectives, I think that that's a testament to the fact that we have people who want to see and hear what these experiences are.
Can I speak to a lived experience that
Sure.
someone shared? So just before I came here, I was having a focus group discussion being hosted by Van City, and in the room were some of the community leaders and people who are either newcomers, have been here for a while, or just are interested in these kinds of issues. And one of the persons who was in the room, much older in age, he was speaking to when he came here about 30 years ago, and his background was in communication, so he wanted to just follow through on that path. And they said to him, "Oh, sorry, we don't have any person of color, pretty much. We don't have a person of color on TV, so you can't." So certain opportunities were denied him. That was about 30 years ago. And then speaking to the success and the growth through the years, and his son now is on TV. And just the different sides of that. I personally I've been so blessed with opportunities having come here to be able to, I mean, there are certain doors that I've been able to walk through and somehow it just opened, but understanding too that has not been everyone's story.
Experience, right. And I think that's part of the sentiment with when we talk about Black history, to think about what has happened and to celebrate the things that have happened throughout. In this case, we're talking not solely within North America, but on a global level. And as Nelson Mandela's name was brought up before, I mean, there are so many Black individuals who we can look to and celebrate in terms of their accomplishments and their impact on the world at large.
And be grateful for
and
them.
And be very grateful.
Because of their doors that they have opened for us coming behind. Yeah.
Tim, you had something?
I will say that you always find what you look for. So moving through the world and feeling that the world is going to be racist or negative towards me, then I will find it everywhere. There are people that are, there's a big difference between a genuine ignorance, a curiosity, and then the dislike, which is that racist piece. So being able to distill and navigate a curiosity, because people sometimes ask, have you always spoken English? And I joke, I was like, no, I learned it on the airplane on my flight here. Like, oh my gosh, really that quick? I'm like, yeah. That's curiosity, and I'm very, very happy to engage in that, and I don't look for negatives where they're not actually there.
That's great. And I think, let's think about it in terms of you being an ambassador. When we look around in Victoria, proportionally, compared to bigger cities, there's not as many Black people in Victoria. So when people meet you and they think, oh, this is my experience with a Black individual, how does that, you've already spoken about what you look for, but how does that make you feel in terms of responsibility? Is that something that you welcome, or do you think that's something that's too big of a burden? Is that a conversation you engage with them to speak about the fact that you can't be the sole representation of the Black experience?
And I think, so I go through life hopefully wanting to be positive to anyone and any person that, I will pat myself on the shoulder here just a little bit. I have a 2-year-old daughter, running around with her in the mall, and somebody came up to me and said, I wish every child had a father like you, which was, touched my heart deeply, because I always feel that I'm failing. As a parent, that's, I think, a sentiment that we all share. But then to think that this is somebody has witnessed a Black man being a father figure, added another level of weight to that comment. Because I think we hear sometimes that Black men are not available to their children. And so maybe now I'm thinking, was this person saying this to me because I'm Black, or was this a genuine comment that he would have made to anybody that was being a father? So I'm now replaying this moment in my head, and I think I still want to stay in that positive space, thinking that it is a good image that I would like to leave, a good legacy that I would like to leave for anybody that comes and meets me along the way, and appreciating also that I have an opportunity to change that narrative. by how I act and how I show up.
Sylvia?
I'm always educating people when I have the chance. And I don't, especially like these men, microaggressions are very hard to, to know whether a person is being malicious or a person is being, genuine. So when something like that happens to me, I always ask them, what do you mean? So what do you mean that I'm a great father? Thank you, So, but microaggressions and I have that with English when people say to me, "Oh, your English is so good." I'd say to them, "Yours too," right? So.
Nice. I should start using that line. What was the question again?
How do you feel being an ambassador? Do you feel like
Right.
you have to be an ambassador? And how does that make you feel as an individual?
The one thing that I really wanted to speak to was what Tim was saying before about some people just being ignorant. I've been in places where, again, the conversation around diversity to inclusion then equity, I've been around really, really well-meaning people who say, we want diversity, we want these plans, we want this program and all of that. But then when it comes to putting your money where your mouth is, that's when you start to see the different sides. And for me, what I've had to do is, oftentimes to try to, my default is, these people mean well, they probably don't understand enough. So is this an opportunity for me to educate? Is this an opportunity to not necessarily win them over, but to find that place where we can both meet so that things can move forward? That's usually my stance. But again, from time to time, you find people who just don't know, don't want to know, and are comfortable with just living things as they are. And in that case,
you will recognize those ones too.
Right. But try to represent and educate where possible, and if not, leave the work for someone else to do. Yeah.
If you could shed light on one issue or cause within the context of a hope that you have or hope that you'd like to see within Victoria for Black people, what would that one issue be?
That's interesting.
Representation.
Well, I'm always interested about work, because work gives dignity to a person. And so when you have a person of color or a person that doesn't look like you knocking at your door, looking for a job or for a favor or for guidance, I just want people to think a little bit and then to open that door if they can. And if they can't do it themselves, then they can send it to another person, because it takes a lot of courage to knock at the door. And so I just want you guys, and myself too, so, it works both ways. So, give people an opportunity, give people a chance. Put away your biases. Shut that down. Because we all have biases, but we can be aware of them. Right. So please be aware of your biases. Think, why am I thinking this? Okay, she's an indigenous person. Yeah, I have heard a lot about indigenous people, but let me get to know her or him. So please just be aware of your biases and put them aside.
And thank you for also speaking about work not solely from an economic standpoint, but from a dignity standpoint, for sure. Tim?
Yeah, I don't think I could add to that. It's those biases, trying to shed them through that genuine curiosity, and not for everybody and anyone. We never know what somebody's life story, what they bring to the table, who they are, and what power and positive change they can bring until we give them a chance. But our biases prevent us from doing that most of the time. Thank you for that.
For me, it's representation and empowerment. There's a lot of power behind walking into a room and seeing people who look like you, or people whose stories connect with yours. And it can be also very disempowering when you're the one person. Like, even without you thinking of it, the mechanics of it, or the politics of it or anything, just the everything. So representation and looking for opportunities to empower people.
Okay. Final question. Tim, you spoke about the comment that was made to you about being a father, perhaps a black father, or perhaps just being a father. If we were to speak about your hope for the next generation, for your children or your children's children, if they were to be in Victoria, what is it that you would like for them to experience?
In one word, pride. Pride of who you are and what you bring to the table. Again, the power that we, in all of us, have to make a change and make a positive change. And we will always need to improve, because as we have seen, things have changed and become better, yet not quite as good as they should be.
There's still room.
There's still room. So I think for my child, I would want her to know that she still needs to keep pushing for positive change and positive growth, and feel proud that she is capable of doing that.
I have a 16-year-old, and he's biracial, and he's Canadian, and he's a happy Canadian, and it's what I want for the future of our children, to feel proud of who they are, where they come from, and be proud of the legacy that their ancestors have left them.
For me, I would say it's history. I don't have any kids, just putting that out there. But yeah, I would want my kids, or the generation of newcomers that come after me, to find stories that would speak to them of possibilities. Like, this is where we started from, but here is where we're at, and here is what we have the potential to do. So yeah, solid history that is, again, representative of the efforts and everything that can be acknowledged, and building community for them, helping them find a place where they can find themselves, whoever they are.
I think we'll wrap up there. Can we? Son. It's a very interesting question. I think also my son is also biracial. And so the constant conversation for him, he's still very young, but understanding the different parts of the equation that make him the unique and special person that he is, and ensuring that he is able to celebrate all of those different aspects, and no one area is made to be less significant than the other. So my hope is that he'll be able to live in a society where he can truly be himself. I mean, inevitably, when we think of Black History Month, oftentimes we think of Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King said in his speech, his I Have a Dream speech, his desire was that his children would live in a land where they're not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That is my desire for Camille, and for all children, Black children, all children, but within the context of Victoria, Black children having that opportunity to explore all those opportunities as well. Can we give a round of applause for our panel? And then at this time, we wanted to have a short question and answer period. So I don't know if, Sarah, did you want to take the mic around for people who? Oh, you have one. Perfect. Okay. If you have a question, please stand and pose it to the whole panel, and I'll decide who will answer the question. At least one question.
Well, thank you. I was born in Trinidad, grew up in Trinidad, traveled, I have to say, the world. I went to the States to go to school. I worked as a maid, and I went to school in the night to get what I wanted. I'm the mother of 5 children. I can't count how many grand and great-grand. And I thank God when people look at you and they say, oh, you what, a coolie? What we used to say Indian, instead of saying Indian, they used to say you're a coolie. And I am proud of who I am today. I'm the mother of 5 children. I can't count how many grandchildren I have. And I want to say to you all, whether black, white, green, or whatever color, we are all one flesh.
Yeah.
One flesh. We may be black, we may be white, we may be green, but we are all one. We come from one place. And I thank you all for that, what you all said today, because it touched me. And I could go back and say to them, I have great-grand, not only grand, great-grand, that I could say to them, you are not that, this is who you are. And I thank you all. And my daughter brought me out here today, and I thank her for bringing me, because I learned something new today. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is for the entire panel also. My question is, do you see a significance to having a Black History anything, as in week, month, versus a Black History period?
Sylvia, that's on you.
Right.
Of course, we will love to have no Black History Month. Of course, we would like to have a history that everybody knows about. But we don't have that. Our children don't know about Black people and what they did in their past. Our children don't know what Black people did in this great country. They don't know it because it's not taught at their schools. So we have to create something. We have to create the education and the space for them to be able to learn of these achievements. So that's why, again, we celebrate this Black History Month, so that people know the achievement that Black people did to this great country. Of course, we would like not to have a Black History Month or a Black History or anything, but in the terms of, in the view that our children don't know our history, we have to tell this history. They have to know who Ross Parker is, So it is important. It is important that we have it. And by the way, Black History Month is not celebrated to exclude anybody. It's for us to include you, and for you, people that are not Black, to celebrate with us. It's not an exclusion thing. It's a unity thing. Okay. I answered your question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll have a follow-up question.
Okay.
Did you want to follow up now?
Could I just also talk about, I think we cannot look at Black history in absence of African history. So celebrating the achievements of Africa as a continent, from what Liki was talking about, the cradle of humanity, to first civilizations. The first library was in Africa, and really thinking through what Africa has contributed to the planet as we know it today, civilization as we know it today, all the way down now to then the Black history, the Black people that have made a difference in our lives today. So I think part of this, for me, is reflecting on African history and the great things that have come out of our continent, and then bringing that pride back into who we are as a people and what we can then continue to achieve.
Sorry, can I?
We'll get another question. I'll let you do the next one. Your follow-up question.
I'll follow up with a comment as well as a question. I went through the University of Toronto between 1973 and 78, masters and blah, blah, blah. And starting with the Black Students' Union at that time, It didn't matter where you were from. We identified with being black.
Right.
And we've always put on events to celebrate being black. It doesn't matter at what time of the year. And that was done throughout the university. And I think a lot of it, I hear words of inclusion and equity and all of that. I think what matters a lot is the fact that are you immersed in an environment that allows you to portray your being black. I'm proud to be black. Okay. And that's what I look for overall. I just moved from the mainland here a month ago, and I'm reaching out to the African and Caribbean Association. They haven't responded as yet, but I'll keep trying. But to me, it's always immersing myself in the environment that allows me to celebrate it. Okay. So my question is, what do you do in order to include new arrivals into Victoria?
What do you do to include new arrivals into Victoria?
It's okay.
Well, there are 3 different organizations, black organizations in town. So, like everybody else, when you arrive new to a place, you have to do your homework if you want to immerse yourself. So it comes from curiosity, right? So if you're interested, there are 3 organizations in town, you find them, and then you go and say, hey, I would like to be a member, and I would like to work with you guys. And I'm sure they will be more than happy. We need members, so we will be more than happy to welcome you. Yeah.
I think the question is more on a personal level. Is that what you're asking, or do you?
No, it's inclusive.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
It's overall. And in terms of, my wife thinks I'm analysis paralysis. So when I studied Victoria, I studied it from a point of view of even what's the demographic, how many black people are there in Nanaimo versus, all the other places. And I picked up a large population in and around the greater Vancouver area. And it's the reason why I moved to Happy Valley.
And I think you're going to have to, again, contact Javi many, many, many times. Yeah. so that they can, it will happen, yeah, it will happen.
Any other questions? We have one here.
Thank you. So my experience has been that the more that I show pride of where I'm from and want to showcase my culture, then somebody always feels, maybe intimidated, or, if I point out that maybe what somebody said was inappropriate, then I'm the angry black woman or something. So should there even be a balance? Is there any advice that you have for, wanting to showcase your culture, but at the same time, not want to seem like you're excluding anybody or that you're angry all the time?
Yes. So I believe that everything is contextual. I believe it was that gentleman who was talking about, am I in an environment where I'm free, I'm able to showcase what but also the fact that there's an environment involved. There are things you're meeting there, and it's not about fitting in or anything, but it's also taking the time first to understand what is the culture here. What is obtainable here, and because for me, my journey to Victoria, being part of this community, it's a journey in evolution. I'm not the same person I was when I came 3 years ago. If I move to the UK next year, I don't believe that. I'm going there to learn. I'm going there to pick things as well. So maybe just taking some time to try to see what can I infuse in here? The fact that you're part of this culture already, that's a huge opportunity. Learn and evolve with it.
And to that end, I think there's a course, and I'm not trying to advertise the course, but we teach it here at Rural Roads, and it's interpersonal and intercultural communication. And we talk about 3 aspects of what that looks like. So there's power, there's space, and there's identity. And so how those 3 components intersect with each other will always affect how you're able to communicate with an individual. There's a theorist named Taye Selassie, and she talks about rituals, relationships, and restrictions in terms of where you may feel comfortable in the world. So based on your rituals, do you feel comfortable in Victoria? Based on the relationships or lack of relationships, do you feel comfortable in Victoria? And maybe restrictions, maybe when as a woman or as a black woman, when you walk into certain rooms, do you feel that you are able to be your full self? So I think when we think through those 3 lenses, or 6 lenses, it makes it a more interesting way to approach how you interact with people, because then you take into account, perhaps they're not aware of this restriction, or that I don't have relationships. Perhaps they don't see their privilege and how they're interacting with me, and the fact that I don't have as much voice or clout in this arena. So being sensitive to those things and then navigating your interactions as a result of those things.
Can I?
Thank you, and thank you everyone on the panel for sharing your thoughts today. Actually, the gentleman at the back of the room asked the question that I was interested in, which was about how you feel about celebrating Black History Month as opposed to every day or all through the year. I had an opportunity to travel to Tanzania last summer, and it was an exceptional journey for me. And I understand some of the comments about walking into a room full of white people. When you're a white person, you have an opportunity to go to a town and everyone is black. It's a very humbling experience. And I think people do need to experience that. And it can happen not just with black people, but pretty much anywhere in the world. If you travel to Southeast Asia or anywhere else where the white population is not the majority. I guess my question to you is, what is it that is special for your families to be sharing about Black History Month? What is it that is unique to your situation that makes you want to share it more with the broad community?
Tim, since you haven't spoken in a while, we'll start with you.
I think back to that awareness of sometimes how difficult it is to find the space to be who we naturally are. And sometimes it's knowing that an action that could be benign in Kenya would be seen very, very differently in the context of being a minority black person in Victoria. So that awareness, first of all, would be crucial, but also then to celebrate that there are those really good and positive and powerful things that make us unique. So I think my daughter's middle name is Gadhoni, named after my mom. And when she introduces herself as Ruth Givanni. And I feel pride when she introduces herself with that name, because then it brings back her Kenyan black identity. And for her to be able to hold on to that and to keep that as a key part of that identity is important for me. And I hope that answers some of what you're asking.
Yeah, well, my son is 16 and he doesn't even want to hear about anything related to Black history or Black history. No, ma'am, please. And he's a Donald Trump supporter. So that's who I have to deal with at home. But it's a nice challenge. It's a nice challenge. It's a nice challenge because here he is, a biracial kid. He supports Donald Trump. He doesn't want to come to any event with me. He doesn't want to hear the word about diversity. And that is him, right? That is him. I just hope that one day, as he goes further in life, he realizes that what is fair, what is not fair, and how things are how things navigate. I just hope that within himself, he become that person that doesn't have prejudice against anyone. He becomes that person that is integral in his word and the things he does. And that's it. Yeah.
Ruth,
sorry. Hopefully I answer. Yeah. So I celebrate my son, who is so different to me, but I celebrate my husband, who is white. So I celebrate all those things when it comes to Black History Month and when it comes to my life as a black woman.
For me, I would say so I don't have any family here myself. I came here because my family was trying to get rid of me. That's not the real story, but that's the story I like to go with. So for me, I think it's that story of coming here and trying to find home or more like trying to make home, and what community has become to me, and the place that I'm finding here, how that is shaping up to become my life story. Wherever I go now, if I went to Argentina sometime, the things that I have done here, the experiences I will carry through life. And if someone is telling my story in 5 years' time or 100 years' time when I'm away and gone, the things that are most relevant about my time here would rise up to the surface. So for me, the biggest thing I want to share is that story of coming from Nigeria, not knowing anybody here, this is polar, opposite from where I'm coming from, but being able to find a home and being able to find community.
Okay, I think we'll is there one more question? The final question.
I'm curious, you came from Nigeria. What made you stay in Victoria?
It's not the food, I promise. What made me stay? It was the same thing that made me leave. I guess when I was leaving, I was in too much of a hurry. I didn't have a roadmap, as with a lot of the things that I find that I'm doing in life. It's like, we need to do this, let's do it. Things will fall in place. And it's oftentimes, more often than not, it's worked. The thing that made me stay would be realizing the part of me that wanted to learn. Above all else, I wanted to see the world differently. So I came here 3.5 years ago. It was my first introduction to a global world. My classroom, I took the Intercultural and International Communication program. We had people from India, from all over. And for me, it was like, oh, there is that too. And then to the things that have been said today about being Nigerian or being Black, and it's like, that's all you know. All the difference, the diversity I know is in terms of from the North, from the South. And then you're here where the person sitting from you is different from the way the other person is different from you. And then you see different sides of yourself. That learning for me was intriguing, and I am still learning, and we'll see where that journey goes, but it was that thing in me that just wanted to learn and try my hands on new things and just see different sides of things.
Can we have one more round of applause for our panelists?
Well, that was something, right? Thank you to the panel. I'd like to invite the president for Royal Roads University to say a few words.
Well, I just want to start by thanking the panel. That was sensational, and I'm just so honored to have had the experience to be part of this conversation today. But I also want to thank everybody who came out today, too. We have people from the university community. We have people from the external community. Shout out to the folks from Brooks as well. Welcome. It's just so great to see so many people here. And I'm delighted to have had the opportunity to join in the celebration of Black History Month. It's Black History Month, as you know, in Canada and the US, and we had an interesting question about why we have Black History Month. And I think it's really important to have a spotlight. There's been all this debate about why we still have pride parades as well. Because the work isn't done.
It's not.
The work is not done.
It's not.
And the progress is not linear either. So there's so much to celebrate, but there's an important need for a spotlight. But that doesn't mean we cannot celebrate Black History Month every day of the year, and we should as well. The commemoration, I think people might know of Black History Month, goes back to 1926 when Harvard-educated African-American historian Carter Woodson proposed setting aside time to honor the accomplishment of African Americans. And celebrations began in Canada at a similar time. And in the early 1970s, it moved from a day to a week. And then it expanded into Black History Month in 1976. So maybe we will have Black History Year soon as well. Officially in 1995, the House of Commons recognized February as Black History Month in Canada, and that was following a motion by the first Black Canadian woman elected to Parliament, and that's the Honourable Jean Augustine. And there's been a remarkable history in this country of Black women and Black men, politicians and leaders. And the motion was carried unanimously in the House of Commons. So I think the point I was making, it's important to celebrate Black History Month, but it's also important to recognize that Black history is BC history and it's Canadian history too, as well. And there's been a long history of Black settlement on Vancouver Island. You wouldn't necessarily know that unless you really asked that question. But it was in fact a Black man, Mifflin Gibbs, who helped work out the terms that brought BC into Confederation in 1867. And he was one of 600 Black settlers who came to BC from California in 1858, really moving to escape some of the discrimination that was occurring in California at the time. And it was these African American settlers who were critical in preventing American expansionists from moving further north after the annexation of the Oregon Territory. So in many ways, we owe our Canadian identity to those Black settlers. And even as a further caution against a possible American invasion, the Black men of the community formed the Victoria Pioneer Rifle Company to defend Victoria in 1860. These are facts that are not well known by many people. Over half of the settlers on Salt Spring Island were Black settlers as well. So Sir James Douglas gave these settlers the rights of British citizens, and people might know that Sir James Douglas's mother was Black as well. Notwithstanding all of that, Black settlers here faced discrimination from the earliest days. And a long and challenging but very rich history has followed, and it was just so amazing to hear from the panel today about your experiences here in Victoria. So we are here to celebrate this remarkable history. I do want to acknowledge the fact that the panel was organized by Aurora Rhodes' Diversity Action Group, and this is, I believe, the second year that the Diversity Action Group has organized an on-campus event for Black History Month. Am I correct in assuming that? And there will be many every single year we will celebrate this. The Diversity Action Group is made up of students, faculty, and staff of Aurora Rhodes University. And together this group envisages a community in which equity and inclusion are embedded in all areas of academic and non-academic work and in university life. The Diversity Action Group champions inclusivity and full participation of all members in the life of the university community. It raises awareness, informs, and educates the university community about the experiences of people from diverse backgrounds. And this is an interesting issue for all of us. None of us have the answers. And we should feel comfortable debating these issues and contesting these ideas as well. And again, I just want to acknowledge the richness of the discussion today. But diversity is the recognition and acknowledgement of multiple and overlapping identities. And we had a very good discussion about identity today. And Tim was talking about his multiple identities. And I think about people who have multiple identities. And these include, but are not limited to, things like race, ethnicity, culture, nationality, creed, family status, gender, identity, age, sexual orientation, education, socioeconomic class, and political belief. So we are very, very honored to have had the panel today, and I just, again, want to thank all of you for coming out. This has been a great opportunity. We've got, I guess this is the last day of Black History Month. So we'll call March Black History Month as well, and we'll just keep it going. But thank you all, and thanks for all the attendees, not only in person, but I know we've had people online as well, and thank you so much. Thank you.